Today's video is all about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an innovative payment network and a new kind of money. Guys, today we're going to be doing a deep dive looking into this project, talking about the team, the tokenomics, the utility, and the overall value proposition. Trying to figure out whether this project has what it takes to make it to our portfolio. So you know what? Let's talk about the news, let's analyze the charts, and let's strategize to capitalize. Welcome to the channel. My name is Mike, and let's get right into it, guys. If you're new to the channel, welcome. On the channel, we talk about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all the altcoins, looking for opportunity. And the question is Bitcoin the opportunity? Guys, we're going to be doing a deep dive today, looking into Bitcoin, celebrating the 100th deep dive here on the channel. I think it was a great choice to choose Bitcoin as the heavyweights of all heavyweights here in the crypto space. The project that, paved the way for the rest of the space, bringing software solutions to our everyday lives that we all appreciate and expect further developments and engineering here in this space. Guys, we're still speculating. Of course, we're still speculating on Bitcoin. Obviously, Bitcoin is the mature asset here in this space, but we're still in the wild west. And of course, we need to be doing deep dives to actually give us that sense of fundamentals, to understand the fundamentals. And I think this is a great project to be covering on our 100th deep dive. Guys, I'm going to just lay out the land here. Guys, obviously, I'm not a Bitcoin maxi. I would say that there are many other individuals in this space that potentially could do a deep dive much better than I can. The thing is that the perspective that I am taking here is from a retail perspective. I want to make sure that newcomers come in, get enough information to get them going and understanding exactly what Bitcoin is from a retail perspective and objective, without getting into too much depth with regarding the tech and so on, but talking about it as a software solution, a Web3 software solution that has a coin, and that is Bitcoins. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. And obviously, guys, one more thing, we have to understand that all of the references or websites or material that I show you here today generally comes from a third party, website. And of course, it's because Bitcoin has no team, Bitcoin has no founder, Bitcoin is completely decentralized from, for the most part. And we have to understand that Bitcoin ultimately is on its own wavelength, right? It's hard to compare projects with Bitcoin. Although I'm going to be using the same standard of the same framework for my other deep dives, it's very difficult to pigeonhole Bitcoin within that same framework. So we got to keep in mind now that we are talking about a commodity, officially defined as a commodity. Bitcoin ultimately is very difficult to apply the same metrics that I have done in previous deep dives. However, guys, the discussion is still very valid. The discussion here is about Bitcoin, its fundamentals, and ultimately, does it have enough value for us to be able to continue speculating into Bitcoin for its future? Okay, so let's continue here. Again, this is the website that I'm going to be using. This is a great website. There's a lot of other websites I'm going to be using here today. But again, this is not an official website in the sense that it's not, created by a team or anything. This is a third-party website by Bitcoin enthusiasts that, are publicly funded through donations and so on. And they created this website to positively represent Bitcoin. So here it is, bitcoin.org. Bitcoin is an innovative payment network and a new kind of money. Now, I did discuss right now that Bitcoin was considered a commodity and defined as such. And it is true. In our current economy, that's where Bitcoin kind of lands. But however, its creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, we'll talk about all of this in a second, he defined it not as a commodity, in fact, a new kind of money on a payment network. So we can't deviate it from its intention. And we have to understand why. Obviously, it's politics and regulation, and obviously, the reality behind Bitcoin. Thinking about it as a payment network kind of leaves a little bit of gray and ambiguity, which we're going to talk about in a second. But let's continue going through here. This website is a great stepping stone for a lot of you guys that want to know a little bit more. Of course, we're going to go through some of the main ideas here. Get started with Bitcoin. Choose your wallet. Buy Bitcoin. Things that you can get through here. But I found this video to be very, very useful. So I figured, why not? It's only an hour and something. So, a minute and 37 seconds. So why not give it a shot so that we can kind of get a true idea of what's going on here? Let's give it a shot.
What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the first decentralized digital currency. Bitcoins are digital coins you can send through the internet. Compared to other alternatives, Bitcoins have a number of advantages. Bitcoins are transferred directly from person to person via the net, without going through a bank or clearinghouse. This means that the fees are much lower. You can use them in every country. Your account cannot be frozen, and there are no prerequisites or arbitrary limits. Let's look at how it works. Several currency exchanges exist where you can buy and sell Bitcoins for dollars, euros, and more. Your Bitcoins are kept in your digital wallet on your computer or mobile device. Sending Bitcoins is as simple as sending an email, and you can purchase anything with Bitcoin. The Bitcoin network is secured by individuals called miners. Miners are rewarded newly generated Bitcoins for verifying transactions. After transactions are verified, they are recorded in a transparent public ledger. Bitcoin opens up a whole new platform for innovation. The software is completely open source and anyone can review the code. Bitcoin is changing finance the same way the web changed publishing. When everyone has access to a global market, great ideas flourish. Bitcoins are a great way for businesses to minimize transaction fees. It doesn't cost anything to start accepting them, and it's easy to set up. There are no chargebacks, and you'll get additional business from the Bitcoin economy. For more information about Bitcoin, visit weusecoins.com.
All right, guys, great stuff here. So let's continue. So you got a bit of a summary here about what Bitcoin is about. I think that was a great video, kind of highlighting some of its characteristics, and it does a good job. It definitely does. So we understand a couple of things here: that Bitcoin is decentralized. There's no middleman necessary. Nobody in between that can meddle in between a transaction between a person to another person. So a peer-to-peer, type of network. So this is a decent value proposition. It's inexpensive. There's no limits, there's no friction, no freezing, and open to the public in the sense of that ledger. All the transactions are open to the public. So a lot of good things to be said here, obviously. There's tons of information on this website to kind of, give you more of those details. But guys, that video did a good job kind of giving it to you in about a minute and something. Okay, so you can see that you can learn more. Business developers, if you're a dev and so on, starting with Bitcoin. Again, I'm not going to get into too much of the tech because I don't want to go overboard with it, but it's a fast peer-to-peer transaction network. Okay, so person-to-person transaction network where everyone can be a part of. There's no limit, there's no restrictions. As long as you have a wallet and you are able to buy or put some Bitcoin on that wallet, you are able to transact with anybody across the world without limit. So worldwide payments and low processing fees. Exactly what we kind of need in this in current economy, in current environment. Okay, so good stuff here. So let's jump right into some of the details with regards to its metrics. Let's use CoinGecko. Okay, because the typical white paper here of Bitcoin that was written, which I'll show you in a minute, doesn't really get it. It's not like there's a Git book or anything like that, like from my typical deep dive. So we're going to use some of the primary resources that we all use, and CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap are both great. So its current market cap is at $2.1 trillion. So you can see that it's quite high. It's the largest market cap cryptocurrency in this space. It's number one. Fully diluted is the same, obviously, because you can see that the circulating supply is almost fully diluted in the sense to its max supply. Like max is 21 million. So what this means is that out of the entire available Bitcoin to ever exist in this space, the max amount, which is 21 million, 19,869,675 Bitcoins are currently out there, right? Ready to get into circulation, which are all fully in circulation, which means that as we see more Bitcoins enter into circulation, they are being introduced via mining. Okay, as rewards for mining and verifying and validating transactions on the blockchain. So this is something that we have to understand, okay, is that blockchain technology has a lot to do with how Bitcoin works. And this goes for a lot of altcoins, or all the altcoins out there, right? Blockchain technology is how we basically record in a transparent, immutable ledger And this is how we can keep track of all the tokens that exist in circulation, okay, in a very transparent way. So right now we're doing pretty good here. You can see that a grand majority, over 90, I think it's 94% of the tokens, if I'm not mistaken. I'll give you those accurate metrics once I do the summary at the end here. But literally, the majority of them are already in circulation. What that means is that there's going to be a point of which these Bitcoin are going to be scarce, more scarce. You can't mine and earn. You can't mine and receive. They're going to be eventually fully in circulation. It's going to take a few years. And what we have to understand is some of the tokenomics with regards to that. It's going to take a while to get them all in distribution. And there's no point of talking about that right now because I'm going to give you some more metrics and charts and graphs and things that could kind of help you visualize what I'm saying right now. But just keep in mind this, is its market cap is massive. It's its largest market cap out there in the crypto space. It's almost fully diluted in the sense that because the majority of the tokens are out there, we have no risk of major dilution out there. There's no unlocks, none of that. We're just waiting on the rest of the rewards to be issued to miners so that we can see all of them in full supply, which is the max supply target of 21 million. Plain and simple, nice and easy tokenomics, nice and clear, no ambiguity and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so bitcoin.org here is listed as the main website. You got the white paper, which I'll show you quickly why I'm not really going to use the white paper. The white paper is the Bitcoin standard type of white paper in the sense that, look, it was written by Satoshi Nakamoto and all of that, but it is a very technical white paper, and it's not that bad of a read. You feel free to read it, and I'll show it to you in a second. Let's keep on going down. You can see you can use any wallets out there. There's a lot of wallets, tons of wallets. As it being the OG out here, you can use a lot of hot wallets, a lot of cold storage wallets out there, and that's the way you keep your crypto, your Bitcoin safe, is put it on cold storage is the safest, and then you'll have your hot wallets, which is obviously safe but not as safe. Let's put it that way. They got a community, which I want to talk about here for a second, which we're going to touch upon that again in more detail. But their community is quite unique in the sense that there's no official Twitter page or Facebook, or in this case Reddits and so websites or anything like that. These are all community based or community driven social media platforms or social media accounts. And what's the beauty behind this is that a lot of the times when I do a deep dive, I go look at the team, the marketing team, who's doing the marketing, how well they did. And the reality is there's no CEO of marketing or chief of marketing or anything like that. The reality is we are the marketing team. The network effect is as strong as its marketing efforts. And this is the beauty behind Bitcoin, is because Bitcoin didn't need any, formal marketing. Bitcoin gradually entered this space based on necessity, and based on that necessity and its actual core utility, people naturally started to promote its use case and promote it, and we all became its marketing team. So really, to judge Bitcoin from a standard or in a positive, in a way such as looking at its marketing team and how they created their marketing plan, it wouldn't be fair, because it's you and I that really push Bitcoin's awareness. And this is part of my mandate here on the channel, is to make sure that everybody here can get proper information, at least to build upon and move forward with their research with regards to Bitcoin's fundamentals. Okay, so the socials are a great place to get involved with the community and see what people are talking about. Of course, we got all there's core devs that maintain and update Bitcoin's platform and source code, and they're all very active on socials and so on. And we'll talk about the quote unquote team, because there is no team, but there are people out there that are very involved on the network from a tech perspective. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a bit. And of course, the Bitcoin ecosystem and the chain, the categories. Okay, this is something that we might as well talk about here, as it's listed as a smart contract platform. Traditionally, we do not define Bitcoin as a smart contract platform. Why? Because there's no smart contracts, in the sense there's no tokenization. And fine, that's the case, but to say that Bitcoin's contract is not smart is actually not true. It's very intelligent. It is a smart contract. It's just not one of which is written with a virtual machine that can interpret, logic the way, Ethereum can, for example. So yes, I understand that, it's not classified for the majority of us as an L1 that provides smart contracts. I get it, but in it itself, it is a smart contract, just not as smart. Okay, that's fine. But again, I'm not trying to downplay Bitcoin's intelligence. I'm just trying to say is that Bitcoin's simplicity is what doesn't require that level of smart that we all define as smart, in the smart contract space. So Bitcoin is intelligent for what it needs to do, and it does it best. So why do we need to explain this even further? It is smart for what it does. It is the best at what it does. So its intelligence is enough. And this is what we appreciate about Bitcoin is its simplicity. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about here. Of course, you can read how does it work, this and that. CoinGecko is going to give you, CoinMarketCap is going to give you a lot of data, historical prices, this and that, a lot of stuff going on. Now, I'm just going to tell you one more thing while as I'm here. I've been doing this a bit of research and preparing for this for the last couple of days. And since then, Bitcoin has dipped down from about 111,000 now to about 107.5. Just to let you know, some of the metrics that I'm going to be presenting to you today might be a little bit different based on maybe the $110,000 level, because again, the infographics and everything that I've generated is right around that zone. So just be prepared that there's going to be a little bit of a difference, but this is the most accurate to the minute type of data that you're going to get as of I am recording at the current moment. Okay, so let's move on. And in addition to what I mentioned before, like there's not a real, let me see if I can log in here properly. I don't know if this is the right way to do it. Let's see. Let's try to get in here. Really, there's no valid or completely valid. This is the white paper, and this is the original Satoshi Nakamoto peer-to-peer cash system that was developed by, Satoshi Nakamoto. And you can see the white paper is a very standard white paper. Okay, so a white paper of which, let me just kind of get this bigger for you guys, and we can start using this in a second. Let's get rid of that. So as I mentioned, it is a very, it looks very academic type of white paper, very technical for sure. Lots of good reading. I would definitely take some time. It talks about how it works from a technical perspective with the hashing and all of that good stuff. But, it's a simplified payment verification system. But for some of us that are not techie inclined, it could be over our head. So I'm going to try my best to not to get into that depth of physics and blockchain and all of that, because that's where things get a little bit hectic. But I'll tell you this, there are some attributes that we do need to define. Again, the privacy aspect, the open sourceness of the ledger, the way things are verified via the consensus mechanism, via the nodes and the blockchain and the miners, and it is a proof of work. Now, this is another concept that we're going to talk about as well. So there's a lot of good things here to talk about. Just that this is in a very technical way, and you can see that the paper is not that long. So feel free to give it a good read. Because that's going to be your primary source. Now, as we keep on going over, I'm going to go back to that mind map in a second. How does Bitcoin work? And you can see there are other things that we could define here on this website, like the block balances on the blockchain. It's a shared public ledger. A lot of people don't really understand what this means, but just think about it as a open platform, or let's say it's a place or a virtual environment of which all transactions that happen via Bitcoin are all open to the public to see. So if I send a person some Bitcoin, or somebody sends Bitcoin to me, that transaction will be posted on that ledger for everybody to see. It's open to the public, which, kind of defines, how private is it? To be honest, Bitcoin's not that private. The only thing that keeps it private is the fact is that our wallet address is not private, but who the wallet belongs to, such as the person itself and where they live and so on, is not really that open. So you're private from that perspective to a degree, because again, a bit of forensics can be done based on purchasing behavior and so on and so forth. And it could be the case that you could track a person down based on their transactions. But generally speaking, guys, the only information that is shared here is your wallet address, because from one wallet to the next, from a peer-to-peer perspective, that transaction is posted on the ledger for people to see. This wallet to this wallet, that's all. And all of those transactions get posted on this ledger, and it is immutable. It cannot be changed. Somebody in there cannot go and reverse or change or delete or anything, any transactions. So from a cryptography perspective, it is very, very secure, and it is very trustworthy. And Bitcoin has been cranking for a good while here without any issues, any major issues. So this is where we're at right now with regards to the blockchain itself. Now the keys are private. Just understand the keys. A lot of newcomers don't understand the difference between a keys, your private keys, and your wallet address. And I've been doing some research, and some websites kind of blunder this by saying private keys and private and public keys. Really, the private keys, let's separate these two terms. Private keys are your actual, it's like your actual password that basically gives you ownership of your assets. This is something that you should never share with anybody, because these keys is basically a phrase. It's a seed phrase of which keeps your assets secure. If you share that with anybody, they can duplicate your wallet and essentially gain access to your assets. So your private keys, which is a string of words, right, or a bunch of characters, is basically it's something that you need to keep hidden and private and secure, and don't share that with anybody. However, when you're talking about your address, which is your public address, an address of which I or you could give people so they could send you cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, this is something that is accessible on the public ledger. You are able to see those transactions from their wallets from a scanner, right? So this is something that we have to understand, is that there's a huge difference between your private keys that need to be kept private and secure, or your wallet. Okay, so that's that. Mining. So this is something interesting. Again, a lot of people are thinking about what is mining. Miners get rewarded. This is plain and simple. Why do they get rewarded? Because they put effort. And what do their efforts go towards? Providing consensus. But most of all, what it is really doing is putting some work in. Okay, and that's the physical aspect. When we talk about physics, it puts some work in, and that work basically creates a very decentralized, fair-based system that allows individuals like you and I to basically become a miner and mine some cryptocurrencies via processing a small mathematical equation, and then if we can successfully solve that equation, essentially we are mining by putting more blocks on the blockchain and verifying that block is a valid block with its data that is associated with that block. And then because of that, we deserve a bit of a reward. We do use electricity, we use our system resources, and so on and so forth. But most importantly, we secure the network. Miners ensure that the transactions that are being placed between two people peer-to-peer are valid and secure, and they are then written to the blockchain for the public ledger to be read by the general audience, right? So this is the importance between a actual miner. Now what I really want to do is kind of back it up here a second, and talk about the mine. We really have to understand what the difference between a miner and a node holder is. Okay, let me just kind of go right here and just show you what I mean. So this is something that over the years, I've heard a lot of newcomers come in and say, what is the difference between a Bitcoin node and an operator and a Bitcoin miner? So a node is essentially a computer that is running Bitcoin software, and it doesn't get any rewards other than being part of the network. And when you're an enthusiast, you really want to support what you appreciate in Bitcoin, and because usually you want the network to be solid and valid, even for yourself, right? Because technically you could be a Bitcoin holder in this case if you're an enthusiast. So full nodes download the entire blockchain and enforce the consensus rules. So this is important. So there's rules based on the consensus mechanism of Bitcoin, and it validates whether the rules are being met and followed. They do not create new Bitcoins, but they ensure all the transactions are valid. So this is what the node does. Anybody could do that via any machine that they may have, any computer that they may have. Anyone can do it. So there's no real limitation there. So it's about verification, not profit. It's about being a member of a community. It's not profit. It's about holding the network strong for everybody and contributing in an open source manner. That's what this is about. It's not profit based. Now, if you're thinking about profit based and economics, then we get into the concept of being a miner. So a miner, for example, a miner is a special type of node, very similar to the other nodes that I just discussed, that perform actual work, that do stuff, computations to find new blocks, to put blocks onto the blockchain and keep on going with that string of blocks on the blockchain. Miners compete to solve complex puzzles. The winner, and mind you, these complex puzzles are just, hash puzzles and completing a hash, and basically, if the hash is proved valid and usable, then okay, they get rewarded, and then the block is added to the chain. The winner adds the next block and earns a block reward plus some transaction fee. That's fine. But mining is a resource intensive and requires some hardware. Lately, it's been very difficult. The friction or the amount of work to actually create a Bitcoin block on the blockchain basically has increased significantly. And as you may know, the halving increases that difficulty, okay, to create blocks. It's because really your reward system is not there anymore, or your reward is not that strong anymore, because every 4 years you're actually getting less of a reward. We're going to talk about this a little bit more with visuals in a second, but this is because of this. In order for an individual or a miner to maintain their steady income or their steady amount of rewards that they have been getting in the last cycles, they need to duplicate or double their efforts, right? So in today's day, you need an ASIC hardware and tons of or enough electricity to basically crank a GPU, a proper GPU, a proper processor to get this going. However, in the past, when it just first started, Bitcoin could be mined from a computer or a small GPU. But in today's day, it's very difficult for you to go and get one GPU and really mine successfully, because now you have the friction of, the reward system. Basically, there's not a lot of Bitcoin being issued nowadays in comparison to the past. So in order to achieve this, you need to have a lot of power, and not just electricity, but GPU power, and it's economically incentivized, of course. So if you put the effort into providing resources to the network, you will get economically incentivized. Again, this is a little bit of a topic that we need to discuss further, because this is where a lot of criticism comes in, because of the friction of becoming a miner, and because it's becoming a lot more difficult for the average individual to become a miner, especially economically. What's happening here is that we're getting a lot of miners that are basically huge corporations or huge groups that dominate the space with regards to mining. Okay, so this introduces a level of centralization that some people say could be a little bit of an issue for Bitcoin. Again, we're going to discuss about the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? We're going to talk about all the negatives that people are talking about, and we're going to discuss them. We're going to leave them open there for you to continue doing your research, because again, there's a lot to be said here, and bringing up these points is going to give you a well-rounded perspective. Okay, so miners depend on full nodes to work, which transactions to include, and which rules to follow. So we have to understand that miners and nodes operate very similarly. It's just that Bitcoin miners actually do the work, whereas validators basically, or these nodes right here above, they don't get any rewards. However, they basically enforce consensus. Now, what we have to understand in addition to this is that this is a lot more open without earning anything. This earns, and this requires resources. Okay, this is important. Now, let's continue here. Let's see what other topics we can touch upon. So that's the mining aspect. Going down the rabbit hole, if you want to know more, this website has tons of information, to the point that you can get into, the you need to know section, signing your wallet. Bitcoin price is volatile. 100% is volatile, guys. We know that. Cryptocurrency is volatile. This is the way it is. Why? Because it's an emerging market. It's new. It's still in the wild, wild west. This is, getting in the early days of an asset class in general that is not stabilized yet, right? We're still speculating here, okay? And because Bitcoin, let's keep it real about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has its halving, you have to understand that still supply is entering the market, although at a slower rate. And this is why we're seeing, the volatility of Bitcoin kind of taper down in the last little while, is because literally every 4 years there's a bunch of let's say Bitcoin that are technically being issued into the space via this halving. Now the halving is not necessarily, let's put it this way, a dilution all at once. The halving just says, you know what, after this date, what we are doing is reducing the amount of tokens that are going to enter into the space. So every time that happens, we get a supply shock. Okay, so that means that we're getting less Bitcoin coming into the space, so we get a supply shock. And because of supply shock or supply shortage, based on supply and demand, if there's less supply, the price eventually should go up. And this is why a lot of us here in this space wait for the halving to come around. Because as soon as the halving comes, we know that when you start, the miners are going to get rewarded half the amount of tokens as they were in the previous cycles or the previous 4 years, which means that they need to work double as hard in order to maintain their consistent rate of return of rewards, if you understand what I mean here. So this is important. This is why we're seeing a lot of the GPU necessity, because then now they need, instead of one GPU, hypothetically speaking, now they need two. Just put this in perspective and into context, right? So that means GPUs are in higher demand. And this is why lately we've been talking about, DPIN and decentralized GPU processing, and because GPUs are a hot commodity here because of scenarios like Bitcoin and in the crypto space needing GPUs for validating their networks and running on the blockchain. Okay, so this is interesting stuff here. Bitcoin payments are reversible. We talked about that. Immutable. Individuals do not have the authority to go and change the blockchain. Bitcoin is not anonymous. We talked about this. Everything's on a public ledger, and you can see what everybody transacts, just that you don't know their name and their address and so on. But the address should only be used once. Okay, Bitcoin address. However, the identity of the user and address remains unknown until information is revealed during purchase or any other circumstance. So let's say you go to a store and so on and so forth. Forensics can be done to track down the wallet based on timing of the transaction, where it was done, and who's watching, and the many different aspects. And we know that this can be done because we've seen it online where people track the owners of particular wallets. Bitcoin is still experimental. We talked about this, guys. This is the reality of Bitcoin, and guys, the rest of the space is even more volatile because of it. And then government and regulations and taxes and all of that. We know that lately we've been given a bit of a pause, or let's say a green light on crypto, and particularly Bitcoin and various other altcoins, because regulation of the past has been a very strict and uncertain and uncharted territory for sure. Whereas lately, given our current administration in America and the States and even globally, we are seeing governments understand the concept of what Bitcoin represents. And I truly feel like what's really changing their mind is that they're realizing that Bitcoin can't be stopped, guys, unless you're willing to really affect the let's say the freedoms of people, right? Bitcoin can't be stopped. And if it's about taxes, look, I think that it's going to be a very tough battle to win for a government or a state to basically go in and try to fight the regulation. It's better. I think they realize it's better off, if you can't beat them, join them. And if they're worried about taxes and all of that, it may be a scenario where they're going to have to tax somewhere else, because it's going to be very difficult here, guys. It's a battle that they may lose here. And I think they're realizing that they might as well join the team. And the Bitcoin team has been joined, right? We've seen a lot of governments, institutions, and various organizations, including businesses, adopt Bitcoin. And this, for me, is a sign that really they're realizing if you can't beat them, join them. So check it out, guys. Do your research. Go on X, go on socials, read some articles, see what's going on there. All right, let's keep on going. Let's see what else I got here. I just want to make sure I don't miss out on some of this that I am trying to get through. Okay, so we talked about supply and demand a little bit here. I don't want to go. I want to go more into tokenomics in a second, but we got this. Okay, let's just continue on. So I got this for you. Bitcoin step-by-step guide. This is an amazing resource of all kinds of information with regards to frequently asked questions. I found this page to be super, super, super useful. Who created Bitcoin? You can see Satoshi Nakamoto. Let's talk about this dude for a second because this guy's a legend. They're thinking of literally giving him a Nobel Peace Prize, even though we don't know who he is. Now, is he a person? Some people are speculating that he's not even a person. Some people speculate this is an alias name, not even his name. Who knows who this is? Maybe it's a group of people. Maybe it's a group of people rather than an individual. I think it comes to a point, does it really matter? You know, the legacy of Satoshi Nakamoto is here to stay. And we know this because ultimately we look at what he's created as a software solution that is saving a lot of what we call our economy. Okay, and it could be an interesting thing to see it move forward and obviously be evolved into something maybe more robust or whatever the case may be. But Satoshi Nakamoto did create something that at this current moment has been one of the best innovations for our economics environment in a long, long time, guys. So we got to be real about what this is. Now, the peer-to-peer cash system, like I mentioned in the past, it wasn't meant to be a commodity. It was meant to be a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Now, a lot of people say, you know, as a cash system, his intention was to create something that was going to be used peer-to-peer, and it's still very valid, but it's very inconvenient. Hear me out. For those of you that obviously love Bitcoin, I love Bitcoin too. But I'm not going to my local grocery store or my local, you know, convenience store, my gas station, or you know, and looking to use Bitcoin as a form of payment. Bitcoin has been proven to be not the best at this use case. In fact, Bitcoin has been shown to use its best attribute as to be not a micro payment transaction type of, you know, network, but something of which we use less frequent, but we put a high degree of certainty in its quality of a transaction, in the sense that it's safe, it's secure. It may not be the fastest. It's not that fast, guys. We got to be real. And obviously, even from its payment system, as far as its fee to transact on, it's not the cheapest from microtransaction for an everyday, you know, like your everyday life. Let's say you do 10 to 20 transactions, buying and selling different things, right? And so on, and paying a fee each time that equates to, again, depending, it's all dependent on what's going on with Bitcoin. And, you know, it's not the cheapest. Where we're seeing right now is the thought of creating layer twos. Okay, and this is something that a lot of the Bitcoin maxis, a lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts don't appreciate. Well, I understand that Bitcoin, what it does super, super well. The problem is that its utility is limited to the case that it wants to just be a store of value, which is valid, very, very valid. You know, correlating Bitcoin to being an alternative to gold, a commodity, right? How often do we transact in gold? Okay, not often, maybe once a month, once a year, once every 10 years. But trust me, you're not doing transactions with gold 10 times, 20 times a day. And if we're going to compare Bitcoin with gold and its utility, reality, it makes sense to say that Bitcoin is not the best electronic cash system. Do I even dare say that? But that's the fact. I do not want to use that. Now, could we come up with a layer two? A layer two would be a solution on top of Bitcoin that enhances Bitcoin's utility by making it faster, cheaper, and ultimately something that we could use as a peer-to-peer system. Also, of course, from person to person, but even for our daily life as microtransactions to like businesses and, you know, living life and buying groceries and putting gas in your car and, you know, whatever it is that you want to do. Now, if we can create that scenario, we're using these layer twos, and there's tons of layer twos coming out, not only blockchain solutions, L1s, L2s on the blockchain and so on, but also ones that are open source, ones that are basically not touching Bitcoin's tech, and is basically a layer on top that deals with native Bitcoin without affecting Bitcoin itself. And we all appreciate this. And we're going to talk about these L2 solutions when I talk about the summary at the end. Guys, stay tuned for the summary. I'm going to give you that infographic like I always do. And then again, who controls the network? Nobody does. How does Bitcoin work? We talked about that a little bit already. And again, these videos are awesome. Is Bitcoin really used by people? For sure it is. 100%. Guys, there's a whole country, El Salvador, if you know what I'm talking about. They adopted it as its official currency, a legal tender in the country. And we're already seeing that even in America, we're getting a lot of understanding that, Bitcoin is going to be heavily intertwined and into our economy. So good stuff there. We're seeing it all over the place, right? Purchase Bitcoins at exchanges. We're seeing Bitcoin ATMs all over the place in different cities and towns, which is good. And then you can make payments very easy from phone to phone, wallet to wallet, and so on. Low fees. Okay, there's low fees, but again, we're trying to get those layer twos to make them a little bit more, proficient. Degree of acceptance is an interesting concept because really what we're waiting for is a bigger network effect, right? The bigger the network, the more incentive you have as a business to accept Bitcoin. Why is that the case? Because if the grand majority of the people in your environment hold Bitcoin, it would be to your disadvantage for you not to accept it as a form of payment. So as the network grows, as more people hold it and have wallets, Bitcoin wallets, with actual Bitcoin on them, the incentive is that these businesses will eventually be willing to take Bitcoin. And of course, as a cryptocurrency, Bitcoin is the most liquid out there. But a lot of people say, well, hold on, volatility is an issue. We get it. Bitcoin is volatile. Imagine going into your wallet one day and you have, let's say, $100, and the next day you have 80, or the next day maybe you have 150. You're celebrating, great stuff, right? But then you go back an hour later and it's back to 100 and up and down, up and down. And I understand that issue, of course, and we still have to understand that as a cryptocurrency, Bitcoin is still very volatile. Why? Because again, we still have the halving that is creating the supply shock, and we still have the macro condition, the macro environment that affects its volatility. Bitcoin doesn't rely on other assets to keep it stable, right? This is the reality. There's no mechanism there. It is completely driven by individual supply and the individual's invisible hand, right? The network effect invisible hand. This is what we like to think, right? And this is how it's designed. So this is where we're at. Eventually, we should see Bitcoin stabilize nicely. It's going to take some time, but it will get there. And then in the meantime, yes, we will dip. We will, rally. We will dip and rally. But you got to know, if you see that chart, Bitcoin has been consistently in an uptrend since its conception, right? Yes, we had dips along the way, but as long as you held through, just about a week ago, there was nobody that bought Bitcoin that weren't in profits. All-time highs was achieved just about a week ago. Okay, guys, so this is what we have to understand, is a long-term, is Bitcoin has been a good investment? Look at the chart, guys. What can I say? Why do people trust Bitcoin? People trust it because of its tech. People trust it because other people trust it. And mostly it's because of its algorithmic cryptographic algorithm. That's all it is, peer-to-peer reviewed, all of that we talked about. Bitcoin fully virtual, yes, as it is. Bitcoin is not anonymous. We talked about that. It's legal in some countries, it's illegal in others. We're slowly transitioning. We made a great move in the last little while from different countries such as Argentina, Russia, and America, and so on, and Thailand, and different, with regards to taxes and clarity. Guys, we're definitely making leaps and bounds with regards to that. So there's a lot of good things there. And then regulation. It's hard to regulate Bitcoin, I'll be honest. It's very difficult. But again, we'll see what they come up with in the next little while. And then taxes, I'm not getting into that. I would suggest that you refer to a tax specialist regarding, your taxes. But then again, that's the name of the game. You invest, you make rewards, you make gains. You have to, pay your fair share, I guess, to whichever, government that you reside in. Economy, how are Bitcoins created? So we talked about the mining, and this is where I want to spend some time in, right into here, because I think this is interesting. It's the inflation over time. So let's talk about this. We're going to bounce around a little bit. Sorry, guys, but I think it's good, and this is a lot easier on the eyes from a because it's nice and dark. So let's use this one. So, as I was saying that, every 4 years we do see less Bitcoin enter into circulation. And what I mean is that eventually we're going to hit that $21 million unit, 21 million Bitcoins in supply. But you can see that over time, right? Bit by bit, we're seeing less and less and less and less emitted, to the point that you can see the supply at about this level at zero. You can see over time we're slowly hitting this point right here, is where we totally cap out, which is that 21 million. But we slowly transition right around here, okay, right around here, to almost very little. And this is where we're going to get a lot more stability in the price. But then the question is, when do we actually get all of these emitted, right? When do the entire amount of Bitcoin actually reach its full emissions? Guys, in 2040 something, this is an estimate more or less, 2048 more or less, we're going to start to see the majority of them or all of them in circulation. Okay, so then after that, there's going to be no more Bitcoin to be had. And we're already, as you can see, based on the supply line, you can see that we've already emitted about 94, I think it's 94% of the Bitcoin have already been out there. And as the halvings happen, we're actually receiving less and less and less Bitcoin as rewards for mining. So eventually, you're going to see this turn into a mature asset where the volatility is going to stabilize. And then how are we going to earn or receive Bitcoin? Not through mining anymore, right? It's through validation. We're going to have that, that peer-to-peer network for validator nodes and all of that. Is there going to be a reward structure? I don't think so. I don't know if there's going to be an update with regards to that, but we can see is that ultimately, we're getting less and less Bitcoin. We're going to see a stability in the price. And if you look at the Bitcoin pricing or the chart, you can kind of see that Bitcoin has been cooling off in comparison to its conception. It's been up significantly in the past. We're going to talk about the charts and all of that, but this was a good indication for your expectation. Okay, just expectation. Look at this. The first time we came out, we went from boom, straight in, tons of Bitcoins all at once. I think it was about, I forget the total, so the issuance. I think it was 60 million or something like that, all at once. Crazy. Not 60 million, 60, it was about 60 something. And all of a sudden it came down, and you can see the amount that was actually issued was significant and less over time every 4 years. And that's a supply shock, guys. That's a supply shock. And then we start FOMOing because we worry that we're not going to get our fair share and this and that. And this is how it goes, guys. This is the name of the game. So I found this to be quite interesting. And I shared that with you. Okay, so let's keep on going. What else do we got? The Bitcoins have value, blah, blah, blah. The chart, I got an outdated chart. Is Bitcoin a bubble? Okay, could be. You gotta understand. But because Bitcoin, the reality is utility is not like any other. I don't think it's going to be a bubble. Do we get dips? Are we going to come down in, times of, like, again, a bear market? Is it going to be bear markets? 100%, guys. We're going to get bear markets, bull markets. But as long as we go higher highs, guys, that's all we can expect here. Does Bitcoin unfairly benefit early adopters? Of course, they're going to be rewarded, guys. If they took the chance early, of course, they're going to get some benefit. That would be silly to expect that otherwise. Won't the infinite be a limitation? Finite? No, it's not a limit because it's anti-inflationary in the sense that nobody can issue more Bitcoin. This is something that a lot of people are taking for granted. Only 21 million Bitcoins will ever be created. It's not like somebody can go say, you know what, I want 22 million. Issue some more. And then all of a sudden, inflation, dilution of the value of Bitcoin. And that's what we've been seeing with fiat currencies for centuries, guys. Right? So this is something we have to understand for just from our currencies for the last decades, we've been seeing it. Right? So this is the problem, right? So really, the finite amount ensures that no more can be issued. And in fact, we can actually expect it to be deflationary in the sense that 21 million means that no Bitcoins are going to get lost. They will, guys. I'm letting you know there's already a few out there that are lost. Okay. And I don't know the exact number. It's hard to really say how many are lost, meaning lost in transactions, lost in wallets, stolen and burnt and this and that. And then eventually what happens is you're going to see that there's going to be less and less over time. Now, what's interesting about Bitcoin is that there's fractals, right? There's smaller denominations to Bitcoin. Most people don't know that, and they think they need to buy a full Bitcoin. But the reality is that there's fractals, and those smaller portions of Bitcoins are called Satoshis. Now, Satoshis, there's a lot of Satoshis in one Bitcoin, right? Lots of them. And there's smaller denominations, right? And these Satoshis, as you can see, you can read this right here, there's a lot of them. And those Satoshis are going to also go up in value to the point that one day we may no longer refer to Bitcoins, let's say, on a daily basis as Bitcoin. In fact, we might say, you know what, send me one sat or one Satoshi, 2 Satoshis. How much is a tank of gas? 5 Satoshis. Just saying. What we're going to eventually realize is that Bitcoin in itself is too high of a denomination to be referred to on a daily basis because it is going to be too valuable. If Bitcoin reaches $1 million, what would be the use case for you to say, it cost me 1 Bitcoin? Right? What would be the case? Well, maybe for buying a big property or something. Okay, fine, I get it. But the reality is, for the everyday use case, it's the Satoshis that are going to really, really make it to our vocabulary. So I find that very, very interesting as well. Won't Bitcoin fall in a deflationary spiral, guys? I'm not going to get into that. It's a very, a topic that I'm not really interested in. It creates a better digital currency. It does. And then we got this right here. I think this is interesting. Why? Because it explains in a little bit the life cycle of a transaction. So let's see what this is. Can I make this bigger somehow? I guess not. Let's visualize. Let's see. Boom. Perfect. Now you can see that you got Rob opens his wallet. Okay. Scans this. No scanner necessary. You can just send somebody your address and then fills the amount and the fee and pushes send. And then this is what happens here. You basically get the user, which is the person sending at the beginning, through the machine, and the wallet signs the transactions. Rob private keys, goes and signs, and then you just wait a little bit. Transaction is propagated and validated by the network nodes, like we talked about. The miners go in there and they try to transaction is the next block to be mined, and then this is the mining moment. Mining is basically the computational process of calculating a certain hash. Now, a lot of people say that this process is inefficient, in the sense that you're actually putting hardware to work and using energy to create this, work. Now, is there a possibility that this work can be somewhat useful? And we're noticing that some blockchains at the current moment are coming up with this concept of proof of work, but proof of useful work. Instead of the algorithm or the consensus mechanism, doing some calculations that have no real use case, why not do some sort of processing that adheres or solves a mathematical problem in real life? For example, being able to, process data that helps a university solve a complex math problem that they've been trying to solve for the last 100 years. Or something like that, something more useful, something that maybe this math can be done to help society in general, and maybe bring a level of usefulness instead of just using a random math algorithm that has no utility whatsoever. This is the major criticism, and I kind of understand that would be a great, and maybe that's something that you can be developed in the future, but definitely an interesting scenario. And then the new Bitcoin is creating because the miner who solves the proof of work basically propagates a new block to the network, and they earn a reward, right? And then the nodes go there and verify the results and propagate the block. Miners include the transaction in the next block, and the validators go and validate. The transaction is propagated and validated by the network nodes, as we talked about. Here, Laura sees the confirmation, check, and then we move on, right? The wallet signs, Rob's private keys, new confirmations, and the end. So it's a very clean and clear scenario, coupled with the beginning of a person wanting to get into a transaction. It signs the transaction. He signs the transaction. It goes through the tech stack, which basically ensures that the transaction is valid through tons of verification, nodes and miners, and then all of a sudden, boom, straight to the end user, and the confirmation is achieved. And all of this transaction is written on the blockchain. Good stuff. That's exactly what we talked about. Why do we have to wait 10 minutes? Look, Bitcoin's not the fastest. That's the truth. Okay, so transaction rate is not that fast. We have to understand that's the current scenario. How much will the transaction fee be? And it's not the cheapest. I'm going to be honest. There's transactions out there that are faster. A lot of blockchains, but a lot of them are not as decentralized, and they require centralized nodes to achieve that speed. But again, we're here talking about trilemma concepts, which is a different category in itself. But this is what we want. We're trying to find the balance between decentralization and complete, getting benefits from a blockchain that could offer us speed and security and, and block size and all that kind of stuff that we want in a blockchain without, compromising. And that's difficult from an engineering perspective. So this is what we have to understand, guys. We're still in the wild, wild west of engineering, and people that think that this is a safe place have something to worry about, because we're still developing the safety through proper technology. Bitcoin is at its best, to be honest. What if I receive a Bitcoin, my computer's powered off? That it has nothing to do with your personal computer, to be honest. So a lot of good stuff here. Bitcoin mining, what is mining? We talked about that, and you can see this website is spot on. And we use coins.com. Great website. All right, let's continue. If you're looking for a wallet, there's tons of wallets. I found this to be very useful. Be careful with the wallets that you download and that you use. A lot of scammers out there, okay? Bitcoin has been around, so there's a lot of people and a lot of incentive to scam individuals. Make sure that you're getting a proper wallet. You got the Trezors, and you got the Ledgers, and then you got the hot wallets for your computers and all of this kind of stuff. And of course, if you're keeping your crypto on an exchange, not your keys, not your crypto. What does that mean? You notice that when you get onto an exchange, the exchange itself doesn't give you your private keys. They own your crypto because technically they hold the private keys to your wallet on an exchange. Whereas if you take your Bitcoin off of the exchange and you put it into a private wallet, a hot wallet or cold wallet, which I would recommend, you get keys, and those keys are yours, and they represent your wallet and the privacy and the full custody of your own assets. Okay, this is important. It's a big full circle kind of thing here for people getting involved here in the space. Bitcoin is a great example of full sovereignty of your assets. Okay, so that's that. And again, a frequently asked question page, solid page here with tons of information. As I mentioned, go check it out. Okay. So we got a couple more things to discuss. Let's take a look at tokenomics a little bit more, because we're talking about, we're kind of bouncing around a little bit, guys. Sorry, but back to the halving concept. Okay, so you can see the halving in the last little while. Every halving, we see the price go up. And we'll notice that every time we get this halving, we just basically move and move and move, right? Because of the supply shock, less supply, and as long as demand holds constant, that means that there's going to be that FOMO. Let's put it that way: people wanting to buy, and the price goes up. Now, if I click here to see the projections here on CryptoRank, okay, very common website, we're projecting 200,000, and I would say, even between 150 to 200,000 is still very, very viable to see Bitcoin hit. But you'll notice that eventually the price kind of flatlines. Like eventually we kind of flatline. Now, it does say that maybe we'll peak in 2031 to 250,000, maybe go a little bit higher later on in life. And I truly do think that it will go up higher, but it's not going to happen instantly. Okay, guys? So we got to have an objective for price, or based on our assets, based on what we can expect from a modest perspective. Yeah, in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it could be $1 million and catch up to the market cap of gold. Given that it's a digital version of gold, it could definitely hit there. But let's talk about this cycle. This cycle, if it reaches 150 to 200,000, guys, it's done a great job. And you can see that a lot of people are talking about this $200,000 mark. My personal opinion is this, guys. Once you get to those levels, start thinking about how you're going to defend yourself, because the price at that level is very well. It did very, very well, particularly if you see the rest of the market show strength. This is something that you need to consider. Okay, so the next halving is in approximately 1,000 days, 5 hours. You can see this is the countdown to the next Bitcoin halving, and we just finished one, and you can see after we finished the fourth halving, the price started moving upwards. Typically from every single halving in the past, eventually we get the supply shock and we still move. Remember, this is not linear scale, this is log. We'll take a look at the chart on TradingView to kind of show you exactly what this looks like. But you can see that we're still in an uptrend here in the space, even though we're getting a bit of a dip in the last few days. No big deal. We know the market works in peaks and valleys, right? And that's pretty much it. The halving, and you can see mining difficulty and hash rate has increased significantly in the last little while because, again, the halving creates that difficulty to earn or get those rewards as you have in the previous halvings. How many Bitcoin halvings have happened? Guys, there's lots of history here with regards to some of the stuff, price volatility, miner economics. Again, lots of research, good stuff here. Price predictions, guys, these are all predictions. These are speculations. These are all projections. We don't know where Bitcoin is going. There's no financial advice here. There's none of that. What we're saying here is based on historical price action and trend. We, from the first halving, went up over 5,000%. Second halving 1,000%. This is fact. This is not me making stories up, okay, guys? Just to let you know. And again, historical price action doesn't necessarily promise or future price action whatsoever. But you can see even the third halving 600%. Now let's say from the current halving, I don't know, let's say we go up 300%. Let's be modest, 200%. Guys, we're on our way. Let's just put it that way. And things have changed a little bit. You got to admit, guys, if you've been here in this previous cycles, things have changed politically, economically, and in favor of Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency space. So it could be a little bit different in the next little while, guys. I don't know. Are we getting into a hyper cycle? Are we going to be going nuts in the next little while? What do I know? But all I do know is this. You be prepared and you consider risk management. That's all you got to do. Okay, so let's go back to this little thing that I got going on here because, there's a little bit to say here also. Now, with regards to tokenomics, we just got to be clear about a couple of things. Bitcoin has been around for a bit. And token distribution amongst wallets is something that I focus on is when I do deep dives because it shows you the level of centralization from a different perspective. When we start looking at, for example, decentralization, we talk about infrastructure. So we know that Bitcoin has its nodes that are well diversified, lots of people using them, but miners in the last little while, due to economies of scale, right, which means that the more miners you own, the cheaper it becomes for you to actually mine. You could take advantage of the cost of electricity by being a large purchaser of electricity. You can negotiate a cheaper price. And the same thing with hardware. If by being a large purchaser of hardware, miners, ASICs, and so on, you could definitely negotiate a cheaper price. And through these economies of scale, technically speaking, miners have incentives to either amalgamate, or the strongest and the wealthiest, the most funded mining organizations will survive. And it becomes a competitiveness to that, where we start to see miners basically become less but bigger. And what that starts to look like is that miners are slowly centralizing themselves. Now, miners, from that perspective, it's not healthy to have, a central source of mining computational power. It would be great to see decentralized and spread and obviously be spread amongst different owners and different organizations. And that is a big speculation right now at the current moment with regards to centralization of Bitcoin, because there is that concept that, again, you got to do more research and you got to decide whether that's a level of centralization that you should dig deeper into and be worried about. But then what about the actual token holders and wallets? So let's take a look here. We have Satoshi Nakamoto that holds a ton of Bitcoin. Okay, so we're looking at, over a million Bitcoin here, okay, which is a lot. Early miner, he's completely untouched, and, he's the founder. He's the creator. He is the engineer behind this. He's the face and name behind Bitcoin. Has those tokens ever moved? No, they've been dormant since the beginning. So this is where we kind of speculate. Will they ever wake up? Will he ever come out? Is he even alive? Does he even exist? Are these tokens going to be eventually maybe just lost forever or burnt? We don't know what happens here with Satoshi Nakamoto's wallets or coins here, but this is the fact. He owns over 8 million Bitcoins. Now we go down the stage. Now, we have Binance, the second largest holder. Now, I don't know if they own more or less, but more or less here we are. 633,000 Bitcoin, which makes them large exchange by volume. So they're an exchange. Binance is a cryptocurrency exchange, one of the OGs here in the space, one of the largest, one of the most established, one of the most well-known. From a brand image perspective, Binance is Binance. You know what I'm talking about. So, they own a lot, guys. And from an exchange perspective, they need liquidity, no doubt, and they definitely have it here. But they also have influence over Bitcoin's price, given the fact that they own a lot of it. Okay, so let's put it that way. And then you have MicroStrategy. Michael Saylor, that's been buying the tops and keeps on making profits. But even though he buys tops, it doesn't matter. He owns 423,000 Bitcoins and probably more because he keeps on buying. So, this is the reality, is that between all of these, the top three, they hold a significant amount of Bitcoin. I think it equates to about 5 or 6%, which, it is a bit, right? And this is the concept. Now, is it centralized in that case? Not really. But if you start looking at all the major holders altogether, okay, we could say about 10%, maybe a little more, is concentrated to heavyweight institutions, including the U.S. government, right? That's the U.S. government holds 207,000 Bitcoin holding from asset seizures, right? So we don't know what's going on with those. Where are they? If they even exist? If they've already been sold, or if they've been, stolen? We don't know. Kraken, you got lots of them. You got United Kingdom and so on. North Korea, accumulated through cyber activities. We know what kind of cyber activities, but you get what I mean. So there are some institutions already. Again, Grayscale and all of this, and this is the thing here, guys. We got to understand. BlackRock is all over this. So this is it. They're accumulating. What can I say? And Satoshi Nakamoto, at the end of the day, he's kind of holding down the fort so that these individuals right here are not the largest holders for now. And can they ever become? It's going to be difficult here, guys. Hold on to your Bitcoin. Do not give these people your Bitcoin, because they may one day, based on this, surpass Satoshi Nakamoto, right? We don't want that. Okay, so let's just put that aside for a second here, and then we'll finally move on to this when we're done. Okay, so let's keep on going. So that's that. We talked about this. Is there any more info here? There's lots of good information here on this website. Go check it out. Arbitr Analytics, historical data, news, overview. We got through the overview already. Now, if you start looking at Bitcoin as an asset, let's agree to this. We start to compare Bitcoin with gold, but fine from its utility, store of value, sound money, or whatever you want to say. But let's say it's the digital gold. Now, we start looking at it, it's at about $2.1 trillion. Digital gold is at about $23 trillion, give or take. Guys, we could easily 10x. Bitcoin 10x, it catches up to gold. Let's put it this way. It is definitely achievable. Like, it's not out of the ordinary or an extreme in any way. So this is where we're at here, guys. We are seeing that Bitcoin, in fact, has a higher market cap than silver, Google, Amazon, and the list goes on. Facebook, Tesla, Walmart, Visa, all the major brands that you are comfortable and know about. Bitcoin actually has, as an organization that we are a part of, we are the organization, have more value than those institutions and businesses. And all we have to do is take over Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, and we are killing it. Okay, so guys, the end goal is to match gold or surpass gold, and I don't see why it can't be achieved, given the fact that Bitcoin is limited supply, right? That's how it is. Gold, and in fact, could eventually, we can find a gold mine tomorrow, and we increase the supply. What happens to the price? Well, let's not go there. Let's not go there, because there's a lot to be said there. From a different category and perspective, we got to do a deep dive on gold. All right, guys, let's move into something else now. What is Bitcoin as far as an institution or an organization? So we talked about it from its tech stack perspective. We talked about it from its tokenomics and, as far as its economy and its wallet distribution. And now what about its organization as a quote unquote business? Is it a business? No, it's not. This is the beauty behind it. It's a completely decentralized organization that is run and governed and funded by people through donations. And to the point that there's a bitcointalk.org, which is the main forum for this decentralized organization, and you can discuss Bitcoin and the mining and the economics behind things. This is an open platform that people can go on here and speak, and self-moderated, and so much conversation here with regards to Bitcoin. And this represents what a DAO is, a decentralized autonomous organization. Now we start to think about, okay, from an organizational perspective, who runs this organization, and is there a face behind this organization? Well, the face behind the organization is basically the core team. And this is what we define the core team is basically individuals that nominated themselves, right, to become part, and anybody could be part of the core team, right? They're volunteers. It's not like, that you got to put an application, someone's going to hire you. They're volunteers, and these are the faces, right? They're completely open. Remember, Bitcoin's an open source platform, open source code. It's there for anybody to mingle with and make changes and make proposals and that. But it all depends on if the nodes themselves, if the miners are going to update that software, right? So it's not like just because one of these devs go and make a change to the Bitcoin software and to the Bitcoin operating system, let's put it that way, doesn't mean that it actually has to be put in place. The nodes decide whether they want to integrate that update or that software. The difference is that there's rules that need to be followed in order for the software to be considered legitimate. Why? Because then it won't work. However, these core rules, as long as they are valid, the nodes and the node providers and the miners and so on can choose to upgrade or not upgrade the code. And this is an interesting concept because that means that anybody could make proposals and make changes to the code and propose it to the network and to the stakeholders of the network, like you and I, and we could vote, and people vote, and basically through this decentralization and democratic process, Bitcoin evolves and stabilizes and gets maintained by these individuals, as you can see them right here. They come and go. Obviously, they're here. They come and go. But the main mathematicians, we got developers, CEOs. I think this dude right here is one of the main guys, the lead maintainer of the Bitcoin core. And then, of course, you got Satoshi Nakamoto himself. This image is not actually him, I assume. This is like something maybe a meme, who knows? But ultimately, this is not a picture of him. But they assume that maybe he looks like this based on his name. Who knows? But ultimately, doesn't matter. You could definitely go read upon this. These are all the developers that are currently trying to keep Bitcoin stable and keep it up to date and make sure the core software is up to date. You can see proposals, new features on the GitHub are maintained by the Bitcoin Core. You can read into this. You can download the Bitcoin Core is available, and there's controversies here and there about voting and all that kind of stuff. And again, it's about democracy, and obviously there's always something to be said when there's many voices contributing to the same idea. Okay, so cool stuff here. Is there a roadmap or anything? No, there's no real official roadmap other than what people, these individuals, bring to the table. Is there a team? Not really. As you can see, anybody can come in and go and contribute and be part of the process. Is there a marketing team or anything like that? No, we are the marketing team. You can see where I'm getting at. Really, you could have, let's see, it's not your fault. Something went wrong. Come on, X. Yeah, X was misbehaving yesterday. So let's see. Look, did they have a Reddit page? Who owns this Reddit page? Who knows, guys? This is, again, it's not Satoshi that runs this. Nobody runs this. Everybody, there's an organization, and they deem the society is deemed it responsible. And here we are. There's all kinds of stuff regarding Bitcoin. Happy Pizza Day, Bitcoin. Happy Bitcoin Pizza Day. 14 years ago today, a man named Laszlo spent 10,000 Bitcoin on 2 large pizzas. Wow. Wow. Guys, these stories exist everywhere. That even, Germany, they lost out on billions selling their Bitcoin and that. And then this is the Bitcoin X page, as you can see. Who runs this? Satoshi? No. It's just, somebody that's part of bitcoin.org or whatever it is. They went in and everybody kind of says, they're doing a legit job. We concur, we agree, and that's pretty much it. And you can see they represent in a very democratic and responsible way. And this is how an open source platform works. And we all respect it, and we all, contribute and participate. That's how it works, guys. So again, good stuff here. That was the core team. Socials, they're there. And the socials, we are the socials, guys. All our accounts, my X account, your X account, your YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, everybody's YouTube channel, everybody's accounts belong or contribute to Bitcoin's network effect on socials. So technically speaking, we're all advocates of Bitcoin if we're here in this space speaking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. This is something that we have to understand. All right, guys. So we're doing pretty good here, guys. This basically concludes the deep dive. It's a very interesting deep dive because it doesn't follow my format, but you can see that a lot of the times details don't need to be hit to understand the fundamentals. And the reason being is when you're talking about a technology that is completely decentralized, in the sense that we don't need to know the team. The team has nothing to do with anything here. We don't need to have a white paper or a roadmap. Why? Because the roadmap, who develops the roadmap? We develop the roadmap. We don't need an official Discord. Why? Because my Discord is a Bitcoin Discord. Your Discord is a Bitcoin Discord. We all have Bitcoin Discords because we all talk about Bitcoin. And this is the beauty behind the decentralization of all of what Bitcoin has achieved, is because it doesn't mean that if one of these, let's say, socials go down, all the rest are still there. And we all contribute a little bit to Bitcoin's future. And this is what we're seeing here. Okay, so let's take a look at the overall. Guys, I release a summary. Every time I do a deep dive, this is it. Let's take a look at the summary. I'm going to post this all over the social so you guys can get it. Bitcoin, what's it at? Just a reminder, guys, when I did this research, Bitcoin was hovering around 110. Right now, it did dip down to 107. Bear with me here, guys. I know it's not the latest and the greatest information, but guys, in the last 2 days, we've been getting volatility. What can I do? So I tried my best, but here it is. Obviously, keep up with what's going on with the price and all the metrics on CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap. But just understand that by the time I post it, we can see Bitcoin back to 110. So that's that. Let's take a look at some of these ratings, okay? And I'm going to justify a little bit what I said here. Ecosystem, let's be real about here. Bitcoin's ecosystem is Bitcoin's ecosystem. There's no sharing here of ecosystem. So Bitcoin Core maintains the open source devs. They maintain the ecosystem and its software. Now we can introduce L2, so the Lightning Network is one of them, and various side chains on within the crypto space are trying to leverage Bitcoin's fundamentals, which is safety and its UTXO model and its core technology that has proven to be very, very successful, particularly the proof of work UTXO model. And then what they try to do is enhance it by introducing concepts that we see that need to be improved, such as speed and the fees, lowering fees and so on. So we're seeing the Lightning Network. Lightning Network is not a crypto project per se that has a coin. It is an open source software solution that is scaling Bitcoin, making Bitcoin better for micropayments, so we can use it, on a daily basis, speedy and all that kind of stuff. And it's great. It's a great L2 solution. It could be one of the better solutions to making Bitcoin have better utility. Wallets, Ledger, Treasure, and many other cold storage wallets and hot wallets. So its ecosystem doesn't need to be elaborative because Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It does what it does, and it does its best. So this is where we're at. There's no other ecosystems there. Utility, digital currency, peer-to-peer transactions, great. Store of value, digital gold, great. Other uses, collateral and DeFi products and wrap Bitcoin, great. We've seen this. But again, the peer-to-peer transactions have limitations because of the speed and the cost. Peer-to-peer, yes, if I'm going to send you some Bitcoin once a month, it's fine. I'll spend $5, send you it once a month. But imagine spending a $5 fee and waiting 10 minutes for your transaction to go through, at the local store. Like that for me, that's a bit of an issue. But we are finding software solutions within the ecosystem, like discussed. So we are currently, this is what we're talking about. Okay, roadmap. There is no roadmap. There's no centralized roadmap. No need for a centralized roadmap. And this is why I'm saying network maintenance and upgrades are community driven. Scalability, privacy, interoperability. These are things that are always being considered here in this space and within the core dev team to make sure that they introduce or we introduce new concepts to what needs to be achieved to Bitcoin. So this is a concept that the roadmap is driven by community, not a central organization. And this is something that we see consistently across DAOs altogether. So 10 out of 10 for, the devs keeping Bitcoin alive and going at it, without, payment. This is people that just raise up their hand and say, I'm here to contribute. And here we are. The roadmap always, there to stay. It's been doing pretty good and being fluid and up to date via consensus and democracy and all of that. The team is anonymous founder Satoshi Nakamoto. As I mentioned, we don't know who he is. We don't know if it's a he or hims or many of them. We don't know how many people are involved here with Satoshi Nakamoto. But really, he's a legend. He's a legend in this space. Why? Because he represents everything that we wish to have with regards to our self-sovereign economics. Something that we can take full custody of. And he gave us that idea. Now, the idea since his issuance of Bitcoin has evolved significantly. And this is sometimes how we, drop a little snowball into a field and we start rolling it into something massive. And this is where Satoshi definitely gave us that tiny snowball. Never mind, Bitcoin is massive. That's not what I'm saying. But the concept has evolved so much lately. And then core developers of the team, like I mentioned, the source contributors, no founder or core corporate entity whatsoever here, as we do see Bitcoin completely decentralized with regards to that. Good stuff. Socials, okay, like I said before, guys, we run the socials. Bitcoin socials run through us. We are the social media platform. We are the social media network for Bitcoin. So I give myself and you guys 10 out of 10 for being there for Bitcoin, even on the dips, on the rallies. We know what Bitcoin is, and we contribute to its its posts and its engagement, and the official Bitcoin 7.7 million followers, no Discord or Telegram. But I'll tell you this, my Discord is a Bitcoin Discord, your Discord is a Bitcoin Discord, and everybody here in this space, whether you like it or not, is a Bitcoin Discord. So congrats for contributing to its socials. Tokenomics so this is where things get a little interesting, back to the typical crypto talk. We start talking about having every 210 blocks, more or less. So more or less every 4 years. What I'm saying. So it's not down to timing. Most people think that it's every 4 years. No, it's based on blocks. And it just happens to be that those blocks based on the tokenomics happen around every 4 years. So every 4 years, we see a reduction in the amount of rewards that get issued to miners. And that's the way Bitcoin is distributed to the market into circulation. Okay, something to understand and remember. Top 3 wallets hold 10% of the total supply. A bit of an issue here for me. Okay, just a bit of an issue. I'm worried about that. You got to admit, that's a lot of tokens. We're talking about, Satoshi. He's the top wallet. He could wake up any day. We trust him up until now, of course, but we don't even know who he is. And we got to be clear about that. We can't be just, faith-based system. This is not about a faith-based system. It's a wallet of an individual that owns over 1 million Bitcoin. Right. And then we talk about BlackRocks, and we talk about, Michael Saylors and all of that, guys, Binance. There's a lot of Bitcoin that is very centralized in today's environment. And we got to understand is the more they accumulate, the more control they have over Bitcoin's economy. Just throwing it out there. Dilution via mining rewards, no pre-miner or ICO. So the only thing that we have is, as the mining happens, we're going to get a bit of more dilution over the next few years, but it's going to be minimal and more minimal as the halvings exist, because less tokens are going to be coming out. However, we also have to understand its history. There's no real pre-mine other than Satoshi's blocks and coins, other than because they were so early that, that's the case. He, got them basically for free. The reality is that that's the only real issue that we have is Satoshi's coins. Relationships, no partnerships. It's not driven by partnerships or relationships, because really everybody's a partner. Like I mentioned, integration partners like Strike, Lightning Labs, Jack Dorsey's, Block Inc., and so many. projects or organizations trying to leverage Bitcoin's technology while still respecting Bitcoin's L1 status, or L0, whatever you want to call it. It's blockchain. Okay, so good stuff. Exchanges everywhere. It's everywhere, guys. It's the most liquid cryptocurrency asset out there, to the point that it's so liquid that we're even getting the ability to pay for real estate and other things in everyday life. So really, Bitcoin is super, super liquid, and it's available on Binance, Coinbase, you name it, it's there, guys. 10 out of 10 for liquidity and exchanges. And that's that, guys. The reality is that's the major things. Now let's go over through my verdict, and we'll talk about some of the little details that maybe need to be addressed before we move forward. And then we'll take a look at the price action in a second. Okay, guys. So let's kind of scooch this over. So cryptocurrency, what is it? So basically, it's a cryptocurrency. It's a currency. Okay, this is important, because a lot of other cryptos out there, unfortunately, are defined as currencies, but really there's only a few that are real currencies, and Bitcoin is a currency. Okay, right? The rest of them, let's say Ethereum, is that a currency? It's not necessarily a currency only, although it can be potentially defined as one, but it's not. Bitcoin is a solid it's just a currency, store of value, safe money, digital gold, sound money. It's a hedge against inflation, democratized money, full custody of your wealth. These are concepts that, revolve around Bitcoin. Top 3 wallets hold approximately 10% of the total supply. That is the issue that a lot of people are yapping about in the last little while. Okay, this is something that we need to be considerate of. And going on with that fact, okay, let's just take a second here and just backtrack just a second, because there's a lot of people to talk about a lot of negative things, right? So about Bitcoin, and I decided to talk about this here because this is almost like summarizing the reality of Bitcoin. Bitcoin mining consumes massive amount of energy and contributes to carbon emissions. I'm not saying it doesn't, and I don't think anybody out there is going to say that it doesn't. However, through the years and through the progress of our energy technology, we have reduced the amount of emissions significantly for Bitcoin, to the point that it's within the realm of acceptance for many institutions, including governments. Okay, so this is the thing here. Renewable energy has become the majority of the source from Bitcoin. You can look this up. It's not coming from me. You can start from here and use my words if you like, but go and do your own research, okay? Because Bitcoin has become a lot more efficient in the last little while with regards to using renewable energy. Bitcoin can only handle 7 transactions per second, which is not scalable for global payments. Guys, that's a fact. But we do have L2s, like I mentioned, coming around the corner. But maybe Bitcoin's utility is not meant for microtransactions that require speed. Maybe it's meant for, bigger transactions that happen less frequent, but the safety and the security and the dependency is there. Maybe that's what it's like gold. How often do you transact with gold, right? Some people never, if you think about it. However, Bitcoin could have that status. Less often transactions, but secure, safe, and all the rest. Bitcoin is too volatile, and it is. Imagine it is a store of value. One day you're a millionaire, the next minute you're a trillionaire, and then you get what I mean? Like, it's so I get it. You want to buy a loaf of bread, and you're walking to the store, and all of a sudden you can't afford it. I get it, and it's a fact, right? It's very volatile. However, we're still in a speculative space that as soon as we see Bitcoin stabilize with regards to its tokenomics, we'll start to see the Bitcoin price also stabilize. And this is something that we have to understand. Bitcoin is used for money laundering and ransomware. Guys, every currency out there is used for this. The difference is that Bitcoin, in fact, is not completely anonymous. It's trackable. And this is what a lot of people don't understand, is that, in fact, because it's an open ledger, it's a lot easier to track, wallets and their purchasing behavior, their locations of what they're transacting with, even online, could definitely allow us to catch individuals a lot easier if they're doing, illicit activities. So this is a big thing here in the last little while, thinking that Bitcoin is only for criminals. The reality is, yes, Bitcoin is used for criminal activity also, but so is every other single fiat currency, including gold. Okay, so to think that Bitcoin is going to solve all of the issues of the world, including illegal or illicit activities, it's not the case. Bitcoin is solving the solution of providing a better currency from a monetary system perspective that is more efficient, right? And ultimately, if you compare it back to the energy thing, if you compare it to our current global monetary system, the question is, does Bitcoin use less energy than our traditional monetary systems? Right? So if you look at the banks and all the, brick and mortar and all the individuals driving to work and all the computers being on and all the ATMs be on and all the fees and all of this and all of that, does Bitcoin use more energy than all of that? Guys, I really don't think so. But again, do your research, guys. I'm not here to, give you any type of advice or, sway your mentality, but something to think about. Let's see. Has no intrinsic value like gold or real estate. It's just a speculative bubble. Guys, everything is kind of like that. If you think about it, right? Obviously, we all need a home. You can't live inside of Bitcoin. I get it. So your primary home or your dwelling is not a speculative asset. It's a necessity. It's like food, right? You need it. These are things you need. But every other asset out there, including gold, is very speculative in the sense that it has no intrinsic value. What do you use gold for? What is it used for? Right? Okay, it's used in some electronics. I get it. I understand that. But what is it really like? Ultimately, it's most of us give gold its value based on its intrinsic values, what we feel like it has, right? And Bitcoin is a very similar thing, and we put trust in Bitcoin to have that intrinsic value based on its technology, right? Based on how it was developed and engineered. And that's where we find its intrinsic value, that we cannot be scammed through Bitcoin. You get what I mean? Like in the sense that we cannot be our value of Bitcoin does not go down based on inflation or an institution or centralization or anything like that. So this is interesting. Bitcoin is not truly decentralized due to mining pools, and of which, yes, okay, I understand that. And we discussed this already, and of course there is a little bit of contention there with regards to mining pools. But then miners are, people are free to compete to become miners. That's something that people don't understand. And the core devs, everything's done via like a DAO and voting and all of this, and the software that they create is not enforced and it's not mandatory for to be used in the nodes, right? So it's up to the nodes to decide whether they want to upgrade their software or not. So there's a lot more details here that is that needs to be discussed. Bitcoin evolves too slowly compared to other blockchains like Ethereum. Bitcoin and Ethereum cannot be compared. Whoever compares Bitcoin and Ethereum and says that Bitcoin is not as good as Ethereum don't understand what Bitcoin and Ethereum are. You can't compare them, guys. It's not fair. Ethereum does what it does, and all the other L1s and smart contract platforms do what they do. Bitcoin does what it does, and those two, let's say, subcategories of cryptocurrencies or crypto in general are too different, and you cannot compare them. Bitcoin, at its best, it is the best software solution for what it does. Ethereum, okay, maybe not. I'm not getting into that. But Bitcoin cannot be compared. Governments can cripple Bitcoin through regulation. I dare them to try. They've been trying. No success. You can't beat them. Join them. Okay, so that's my concept there. Now back to this. Okay, so we can have a lot within this verdict, and you can see that this is the reason why I went off this infographic, because there's a lot to be said. But then we start to look at, ultimately we've achieved complete decentralization. Yes, there's 10% of the token supply being held by 3 wallets, but Block Rewards begin issuing 50 Bitcoin at once. Now it's been reduced to 6.25, and it will be further reduced as the halvings exist. So we're not going to get a lot more supply entering. Up until 21 million Bitcoins have reached around year 2140. Guys, that's when we're going to potentially hit about 21 million Bitcoins, far and beyond, right, our lifetimes, which means that we are setting a groundwork, a foundation for the future here to see where Bitcoin goes. And even if it doesn't, go full storm in the next past 2024 2140, it doesn't matter. It literally is set the framework for whatever is going to be coming next beyond us. Okay, so this is great. When last Bitcoin will be mined, more or less around there. So the development funded via donations, grants, and volunteers. Nothing is centralized with regards to that. Bitcoin community is integrated in all Discords, Telegrams, and all other social media platforms, guys, because we are the marketing team. Its marketing is as strong as its network effect. And we are part of that effect. Not the best for microtransactions. We discussed that. Proof of useful work. Maybe that's something we may see next. Putting Bitcoin's consensus mechanism to actually solve mathematics that has some useful use case that we can actually maybe monetize. Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. Or at least, solve some some other problems out there in the world that could actually be benefited using, this computational power instead of wasting it on useless mathematics. That's something to think about. All right, guys. So Bitcoin with the market cap of gold. Yes, gold. Yes, it's been around. We love it. Okay, a lot of people love it. Culturally, within humanity, we've accepted gold to be, the standard, right? The gold standard. So Bitcoin, the market cap of gold, $1 million. But the reality is, if Bitcoin hits $1 million, it's going to 10x. It's going to catch up to gold, and it hit its target. In my opinion, eventually it's going to happen. Is it going to happen in 2140? Who knows? Maybe. Is it going to happen sooner? Possibly. Could have happened this cycle. What do I know? But I'll tell you this, guys. 10 million price projection of 10 million, not $10. Sorry, 1 million, not $10. We got to fix this. Definitely $1 million. I think it could definitely happen. 100%. Okay, so this is definitely not a $10 scenario. Okay, so I give it 10 out of 10. Bitcoin, 10 out of 10 for sure. Ultimately, we know that Bitcoin is here to stay. Guys, just understand bear markets, Bitcoin does retrace. Bull markets, Bitcoin expands. Just be prepared for all the volatility that's going to come. All right, guys, let's take a look at charts. I know you're here to talk about price action as well. Let's see what's going on with Bitcoin. Bitcoin in the last little while, guys, took a bit of a hit. Now, it's not massive. Why? Because, guys, structurally speaking, we're sound. However, in the short term, we're seeing a lot of people feeling a little bit uneasy about what's happening with Bitcoin's dip, particularly because a lot of us are involved with the altcoins. We're not getting involved with altcoins right now. We're looking at the Bitcoin chart, so let's take a look at this in a little bit more detail. Now, as you can see, I got some TA for you guys as usual. This is my typical chart. It's a little bit of a piece of art, as you can see. And, I've been tracking this whole thing to the upside. We caught the bottom very, very nicely here. I got bullish into this level, bought some altcoins. Some of them did well, some of them not, still trying to wake up here. But Bitcoin and my bags are doing great. Now, all of a sudden, we start speculating on what should we be doing as we see Bitcoin, entering price discovery. We did enter price discovery. We almost hit 112, to be honest, guys. And then all of a sudden we took a bit of a hit. And it just so happened that that hit came right on the same moment that we got a orange swan event. Donald Trump came out talking about tariffs to Europe, which again, basically induced the market to fall a little bit here. And it took full advantage of it. And it did. Okay, so we came down, dead cat bounce, rolled over, came down for another lower low. The next target for me to see Bitcoin come down to is about 104,000 and change. Do I think it's going to go there, guys? That's where the liquidity is at. So I got to mentally and economically prepare myself for this to happen. Okay, in the meantime, we could still hold up here. And the only way we're going to really see validity in this area is if I zoom in. So let's zoom in on the 1 hour. You can see that we're at a critical zone. If you can see what's happening here, this right here is very, very important. If we break below 106,777, guys, we start coming down looking for next level of support. And again, the next level for me is all the way down here. Okay, so 104. Could that happen? Possibly. Let's go back onto the daily for a second here and zoom out, because I really want to touch upon this. You can see volatility drop pretty hard. We see the momentum overbought. Do we start rolling over in a big way? Look at this. EMA is facing down. We got our first little red histogram bars. We got an expansion still here, but guys, we're getting bearish divergence. We're seeing these bearish divergence signs for the last week or two. But we didn't get any follow through. We've been getting melt up after melt up, right? And that's what we've been experiencing. So the reality is that do we get a continuation, or do we get a dip that is not that strong because we are in the bullish control zone to continue going for another expansion up, similar to what happened here? The market plays games, guys. And when you're in the bullish control zone, such as like we are here, you can see the expansions do happen. The expansions get aggressive. Bullish control zone, dips, continuations. When you're in the bearish control zone, which, guys, we've been a bit bearish here, but you can see that the bullish side of things are so much stronger, much, much stronger. So that's that. Now, if we kind of look at momentums overbought. Now, what I really would like to do here for a second, instead of just looking at the shorter time frames, because the daily would be that case, let's take a look at the which chart should we show you here today? Let's take a look at the BLX, if I can find that chart for you guys right here. This is the BLX. Now, this is TA that I, was looking at earlier on. Let's just go on the weekly here for a second. Let's kind of scooch out here. Let's make this logarithmic so we can see, or let's make it linear. There you go. And there we go. We're showing you the rainbow chart, what people call the rainbow chart, because you can see that over time since the beginning. Maybe we go on the monthly. It's probably easier to see. We slowly started moving up and up and up, and you can see where we are right now, guys. Like, look where we are. Like, we're still moving up. Now, I understand in the short term we're very fearful. The emotions are there, but you can see if we start hitting this top of the line here, of this trend line, we could potentially hit 100, 190, 200,000, and maybe even peak up slightly above it. And that would be a liquidity hunt. That would be a level like something like happened here. And then boom, and then we retrace and we come down for a bear market. And the bear market can come down as low as even 50, 60,000. It's very possible here, guys. So what should we expect in the next little while? Volatility on lower time frames, guys, because big picture, as you can see, the yellow lines represent halvings. After every halving, we pump. Now, do I know what's going to happen for certain? No. This is obviously the wild west of crypto space. There's no certainty here. I do not have a crystal ball, but historically speaking, as you can see, every time we get the halving, we get the supply shock, we move higher. That's the BLX. What can I say? And Bitcoin has been dominating significantly in the last little while. Let's take a look at Bitcoin dominance, because I know a lot of people are looking at this chart. Let me get this out of the way for a sec. You can see that Bitcoin dominance shows that Bitcoin as an asset has been dominating for the last little while altcoins take a bit of a hit, which means that ultimately, guys, when are we going to reverse and see altcoins flourish? Guys, statistically speaking, it's about time that we see a reversal here and we see altcoins flourish. But it doesn't mean that Bitcoin's going to dump. It's just that a lot of people are going to rotate a lot of their gains into altcoins, because a lot of them are still at the bear market bottoms, waiting for their opportunity to run. So as soon as that happens, guys, it's going to be a congratulations types of moment where we start to see, a lot of altcoins do very well. But guess what people are going to do when their speculative altcoins start running? They're going to take profit and they're going to buy Bitcoin and they're going to hold Bitcoin. Why? Remember, it's utility. It's core utility. It's a store of value. So we're going to see that eventually people might stay in stables for a bit, let the Bitcoin price drop, right? And then buy the dip on Bitcoin, because we know that ultimately Bitcoin as a store of value is like digital gold, and that's where you're going to keep your capital safe. So at the current moment, guys, we're doing pretty good here with regards to Bitcoin and its dominance in the market. Okay, so that's that. Now let's go back onto the traditional chart, as I always do every day, looking at this chart. As long as we stay above some critical zones, and I'm saying as long as we can stay above $102,400, we're still okay. Why? Because I'm a momentum trader, guys. I keep an eye on market structure. And market structure right now, if we get onto the 6 hour, like I said, as long as we maintain making higher highs and higher lows, Bitcoin is still fine. Even if we come down to 104 and start hunting this liquidity, we can still come down to the bottom of the range to 102 and still hold the support as support once again. The worry is if we start breaking down below, guys, back down, we go. $98,000 is very possible to snag the 200 EMA on the 6 hour. And we can see there's a volume gap here that will provide that weakness for the price to fall right through to look for this liquidity down here. This is factual, right? There's liquidity down here based on volume and emotion, but there also is some right here. Again, 103, 102, point of control. Let's see what happens. Now, if we get down to the 4 hour, as I mentioned, look at this structure, right? Look at the structure, guys. If we start breaking below these bottoms, we start changing character on the lower time frames. We were making higher highs and higher lows. Donald Trump came in here into this consolidation, Bart Simpson to the downside, and now we're making lower lows and lower highs, bouncing like a dead cat bounce all the way down until we break change of character. Not what we want, but this is what we're getting. We need to be prepared for what the market gives us at all times, staying one step ahead. Now, momentum could get oversold, guys. If momentum on the daily gets completely oversold, guys, we're in trouble. Look at the last time that happened. Okay, just throwing that out there. Look at this. grinding, 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 got the follow through, got a bigger dip. If this happens, we're coming down, guys. We can come down as low as $86,000 and still maintain a bullish stance. That's the facts. Okay, and still maintain a low that is higher than this low. However, it would put a wedge into a lot of our plans. A lot of our portfolios would be crying by then. So a best case scenario, we go sideways all summer. I think that that's a viable strategy, or a expectation is that we potentially go sideways all into this level all summer long. And if that happens, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to buy and accumulate within the sideways range? Well, breaking out of a nice rounded bottom and consolidating before a major breakout is the best way to do it. Why? Because you allow people to take profit that are going to take profits on the short-term pumps, and then allow people to buy the dips that are thinking breakout and continuation. And then when we actually break above resistance, we can break through with strength rather than weakness. Because if we break out right now, there's still a lot of people that are holding from these bottoms and that are a little bit skeptical on what happens. And then any little news from Donald Trump, a sneeze, they're going to sell off because of the fear of giving back their gains to the market. So in the next little while, guys, we could see a bit of a recovery, guys. Be patient. You know, the new week is around the corner. We're definitely going to see what happens with the Asia market tonight and so on. But this is the way the market goes. Peaks and valleys, ebbs and flows. Be prepared. We can do one of these, bounce right around this level, continue to the upside really quickly. And this is the way the market goes. Right now, we're seeing more of a dip here on Bitcoin. But guys, this is how it is. Be prepared. Up, down, bearish, bullish. It doesn't matter. All you want to do is stay one step ahead of the market. All right, guys, if I've offered you any value in this video, do the channel a massive, massive favor. Slap the like button. It does really help out with the algorithm. If you want to follow me on the socials, the links are in the description below. Feel free to join the Discord, guys. The Discord is where it's at. Lots of good alpha, trade setups, fundamentals, and learning material. The best part is it's absolutely free. Take care, guys. Have a good one. And don't forget, buy the dip.